I was recently on a stock forum of a company that I have invested in. It was just sort of like a Yahoo stock forum. And one of the commenters there said, I do like our CEO, but I wish the good Reverend would not speak on diversity, equity, and inclusion so much. He's spending a lot of the corporation's, his time, energy, and effort, and seemingly a lot of the corporation's mission is being converted into advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these are, social values, advancing a certain suite of social values. And someone answered him and said, well, he has to do that. There's this major investor, there's the connected money people for this financial corporation are insisting that he do that. And once he called him the Reverend, he called the CEO the Reverend because he was evangelizing on DEI so much. And then they said, well, he has to do that because this connected financial entity, I believe it was BlackRock, don't quote me on that, but I think it was BlackRock, is pressuring him to do that. They're leveraging their investment dollars to have these corporations go this way and spend energy and effort on that instead of making their shareholders money. Like Colonel Kurtz says, it hit me right here like a diamond bullet that the new civil religion, the religion without God, backed by the state, funded by the printing press with infinite fiat dollars, is scarier than the Christian right could ever hope to be. I know that people are terrified of the Christian right, and honestly, I knew a lot of those people, and I didn't want them running the country either, is what I concluded. But there's no way they could have ever pulled off what is being pulled off right now. That everyone said separation of church and state, separation of church and state. And when that religion had a God, it was easy to do. When that religion was divided into 100 different or more sects, that was easy to do. To tell them, no, don't go any further. There can't be an institutional mixing. And I think it's been carried too far, honestly, quite a bit too far. But there's no such barrier to this new civil religion. You just dispense with God, and they can push all the values they want. And they can change those values from day to day. There's no outside reference point. All that matters is if we manufacture even, because if you control the media and the media is centralized, I'm for decentralization and everything. But we have a decentralized government, we have a centralized government with a centralized media and a centralized money system. And what that means is they can do what maybe to a greater extent than has ever been done before. They can manufacture consent for almost anything they want. They can say, well, this is the voice of the people. And they manufactured it. Most people would not feel that way. Maybe no one person feels exactly that way, but they can manufacture the consent through telling the company CEOs, you'll get on board with this program, or we'll crash your stock. And then the education system, the funding there comes from Washington. And if there is someone in the way, some media group in the way, they can just print up the money to buy them out, and then that voice is no longer heard. And so they have the power to manufacture consent, and then what they're doing is they're saying that opinion that we've manufactured, it is the communal voice of our population. It's the voice of the people, which since they've got God out of the way, that's the new voice of God. And they can take it further than even through history. If you find some oppressive religious regimes, those guys didn't have the tools to take it as far as these people do. Now, you may say, oh, but I like the values that the government is pushing. Yeah, you like it today, but there's no restraint and there's no certainty. You could be the friend of the state one day and the enemy of the state the next. There's no outside standard by which to judge how good this morality is. And I want to give you a quote. And this quote, this guy was so smart. He's wrote this in 1908. In 1908, Chesterton said in a book called Orthodoxy The modern world is not evil. In some ways, the modern world is far too good. It is full of wild and wasted virtues. When a religious scheme is shattered, it is not merely the vices that are let loose. The vices are indeed let loose, and they wander and do damage. But the virtues are also let loose, and the virtues wander more wildly, and the virtues do more terrible damage. The modern world is full of the old Christian virtues gone mad. The virtues have gone mad because they've been isolated from each other and are wandering alone. Thus, some scientists care for truth, and their truth is pitiless. Some humanitarians care only for pity, and their pity, I'm sorry to say, is untruthful. That is Chesterton in 1908. Another man from that generation, or the one immediately after it, I guess, was C.S. Lewis, who pointed out that if you set out to oppress someone and take away their rights, then your conscience is their ally and restrains you. You can only go so far because you know you're basically defrauding those people and you're hurting them and doing bad to them. But if you think you're trying to help them, if you think you're trying to re-educate them, if you think you're trying to free them from their shackles of ignorance or what have you, if you think you're doing good, then there's no limit to what you can do to them. There's no restraint to your behavior. And that's where we're coming to. That's where we're getting at. And I think you can see when there is no outside standard, and what they're trying to do is say, well, this is the voice of the people. This is our democracy speaking. That dissent isn't just people who disagree with the dominant view. It's a disease. It sort of interferes with their whole claim to legitimacy, because their whole claim to legitimacy is now based on, well, we've manufactured this consent, and this is the voice of the people, and it's what the people want. And that's what we've got to do. And you say, well, wait, I'm one of the people. I don't want that. This other person here, they don't want that either. And why do we all have to want the same thing? Why do people in New York and rural Arkansas have to want the same thing? Why do people on the West Coast have to want the same thing as downstate Illinois or upstate Illinois? Just you don't need to. So it is a threat. It isn't just someone, oh, you have a difference of opinion. You're getting in the way of their worldview and their identity and the way they think that truth is in virtue or determined. So let's take a closer look at the values and the consequences of the type of values of the new civil religion that is happening right before us, with a power that past religions never could possess. The state, there's no separation of church and state in the new civil religion. It is the state. The state's backing it. And they're using corporations to leverage it. And corporations themselves are what? Creations of the government. So it's almost like they're creating their own artificial people and then using those artificial people to help herd the real people into line. And again, you may agree or you may disagree with their current goals. That doesn't matter. The fact is they're doing it. And they're doing it how? Through issuing a fiat currency, through debt. The cost of it is not felt on the current generation. So it's pushed off to the next generation. So it's almost like you are paying, and I said this in localism, with fiat money, you are paying for your own re-education. You are paying to have your own society reshaped. Just take some examples of these unbalanced virtues that are wandering around unconnected to the larger truth. It's good to follow scientific truth as such. But again, like he said, if you don't combine it with mercy, scientific truth can become pitiless. You can become a social Darwinist and say, well, we're going to evaluate these people on our objective standards here and decide who's worth saving and who's not. We'll give health care to everybody, but then we'll decide who gets it and who doesn't. Or the upper class no longer feels an obligation to provide charity for the lower class, especially if the lower class, or if they do, if they say, yes, we'll take care of you, they expect something in return. What do they expect? They expect the lower classes to take direction from them. In other words, you give up your freedom for us taking care of you. If you're bucking the system and you're disagreeing with us, and you're saying that we're doing something bad, we don't like that, and so we'll stop taking care of you. Or, since that's seems a little too harsh right now, they can layer it on and say, well, it's not that we want to eliminate all these useless people in their minds, but the planet just won't sustain them. We've got to protect the planet. So we have this higher good of environmentalism. And so you can feel self-righteous loving the planet, and even if you don't love your mother. So, virtues get out of balance. Or, let's say someone tells the truth about certain forms of sexual deviancy, which is a big no-no in this culture. You're not supposed to do that. And regarding people's feelings and being sensitive to their feelings about that isn't wrong, and not, being abusive to them because they make different lifestyle choices still, or they wish to use different pronouns or whatever. It's not bad to regard their feelings. But if you do it at the expense of truth, if you never point out, here's where that leads, here's the result of that, here's the average age of death for someone living as X and Y, here's what your future will look like. Is that really even love for the person? Or is it just going along with the message that is really, it's a virtue unmoored to reality, just like Chesterton was talking about. Now, so the society is not without virtue, but it's self-constructing its own false morality of contrived sins and contrived virtues, and the state is in partnership. It's in partnership with big finance. It's in partnership with big business. And, of course, it's in partnership with big religion. Don't think religion, when your money is dirty, don't think your religion will stay clean. It won't. Your politics will be even dirtier than usual. Your business will be dirty. And your religion will be dirty. Your science will be dirty because the money's dirty. And the money is used in every transaction where we all use it. So they're building up their own religion with their own code. And people that, are brought up on the traditional Western style Christianity, they're not getting it. They're not understanding what's happening. They don't understand the self-righteous certainty with which adherents of the new religion, the new civil religion, state-backed, men in lab coats are the new high priests. They don't understand. Gee, they're acting like I'm the bad guy. Yes, they believe you are the bad guy. Okay? And they say, well, how could those people don't seem to have any morality? Yes, they have a morality. They're constructing it. It's not transcendent, but they have their own morality, and their own morality is more dangerous than their sins. That's what Chesterton was trying to say. Kind of like the Bible, the story of the Garden of Eden all over again. They want to determine for themselves what is good and evil, and they've determined that they're good and God's evil. When originally in the story, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the first thing they found out was that they were evil. But now, unmoored to truth, mankind's decided that God is evil and they're good. So, we can't settle this question. Traditionalists are saying you guys are sinners. The new morality, the new civil religion is looking at traditionalists and saying you guys are the sinners because you're the dissenters for our new morality. And who's the sinner? You can't answer that question until you determine who's operating from a foundation of truth. So the question is whether there's a God-ordained moral order to the universe which applies regardless of human desires, or whether we can construct our own morality that's as valid as any other can possibly be. And that's really the question. a morality built on the foundation of the collective feelings of humanity. And is that the highest value, or is there a higher order above man? And that's kind of why I think that the younger generation that's sort of been brought up on this is so determined not just to say, I don't believe in God, but to make God the bad guy, basically. You have to make God the bad guy in order to demonize people who still hold to that faith, in order to what? Force your competing religion, because that's kind of what it is. You're competing religion on people where good is decided by the hashtag current thing. So, the church today can't speak repentance to the youth. The youth are offended at the very idea that they've done anything for which repentance is needed. They think the church needs to repent of their churchiness and be like them. So they have, and what do? They have a new works-based system of righteousness. Now, does that produce righteousness? No, it didn't for the church, and it doesn't for them either. It produces insecurity or arrogance. That works-based systems, this is one of the main tenets of that old-time religion, Christianity, that works-based systems produce either insecurity or arrogance. If you think you're doing well, then it produces arrogance and judgmentalism, because you're making yourself miserable following these rules, and so you're really hard on anybody that you think is not doing it right like they ought to. Or insecurity. If you're no good at following those rules, you think, it's beyond you and there's nothing you can do. And so, of course, the traditional answer in Christianity is that Jesus did what you couldn't. Just trust him and do your best and be nice to each other. And don't worry about doing the right thing to score brownie points with God. Jesus has got all the brownie points you're ever going to get. And so you can do the right thing for the right reason. And that's sort of been a relief for trying to obtain righteousness through following the law. But can the new civil religion offer that? Not at all. Not one bit. They have to keep people hopping with good works and how loudly you can denounce whoever's fallen out of favor today, and how loudly you can voice support for whatever hashtag current thing is, even if it was the opposite of what you were cheering for last month, because the political winds have changed. But education is up, violent crime is down, robbery is down, rape is down, education's up, lifespan is up, people with some kind of health care coverage are up. There's a lot of evidence they can point to that indicates that things are getting better, that the new civil religion, in their view, is working. It's building a tomorrow better than the past built on the old morality. The new religion, civil religion, is, quote, saving collective mankind. Now, that's where I've got to get back to Chesterton, okay? He said the devices are let loose and they cause damage, but the virtues wrongly applied can cause more damage. It may be that we are less rowdy than we once were, but we're more venal. We're more corrupt. Sin hasn't been eliminated. Rather, society has become better at covering up the costs and the harm of the sin. Has prostitution gone down? Yeah, it's gone down, but not because there's less sexual sin, not because there's less sexual aggression. We just have access to torrents of pornography now that we never had before. Is that better? It's better at covering up, but is it better at dealing with the issue in here and in here? No, it's not. It could be worse. Objectification of women in our lives may be less now because we have more access to digital women who are objectifying themselves. There's not less sin. The costs of sin are deflected into areas where the harm is less visible. And that's going to continue to work or appear to work until it doesn't, because it hasn't addressed the real problem, the root problem. Not viewing the other person as a person, wanting sex without commitment, and so on, and the other things that really you need for a society that's healthy. In the same way, we've rejected a view of the poor as created in God's image, or at least the capacity to bear God's image. And we've created a new way to care for the poor, which sort of masks our growing lack of compassion. We have EBT cards now. No one has to see soup lines like they did in the Great Depression. We have programs to deal with those people now, and you never have to touch them. You never have to feed them. You don't have to get your hands dirty. Just support the programs. Just vote for the politicians, and you can consider yourself moral even if you have no real affection for any of those people that are served by these dehumanizing programs. And these programs, they're not even being paid for us, not by us. We create debt that we pass on to the next generation to fund all the programs. So we don't feel any pain in giving. The cost of our giving is not felt by us. So things seem to get better for a time. And someday, though, our ability to fund this welfare through government debt is going to vanish. We're close to the end right now, I think. And then we're going to see who's really compassionate. We're going to see how much compassion people have when they actually have to pay for these programs themselves rather than simply radiate self-righteous indignation at those who challenge the cost of the programs, those who challenge the methods of the programs. Just like with the other, it's going to appear to work until it doesn't. At one time, the professional thief had to take risks to go out and steal. He had to see that he was taking real stuff from real people that were hurt by the loss. The social welfare thief today isn't forced to confront any of those costs, and the immorality of his actions is lost in abstractions. He's getting his check from the government, and they always seem to have plenty of money. Or at worst, he's like, oh, they're taking it from the rich, and I never have to see those people as real individual persons. If he ever met a wealthy person in his community, he may not even make the connection. That person money's being taken from them and given to me. They may not see it in those personal terms. So voting for a government that will legally rob your neighbor is a lot less risky. It is a lot easier on even a decayed conscience than the old style of theft. It's no wonder that officially measured levels of theft have gone down. It's just not counting the kind of theft we do today to one another. But it's not because greed, envy, covetousness has decreased in the very least amount. Those things are all still with us. They may be worse than ever. Those things may be worse than ever, but modern society has covered and concealed those sins, haven't they? By interjecting the state between the sinful heart and those hurt by it. We're bragging that robbery is down. No, it's not. We're just not calling it that anymore when the state is the intermediary. Notice how in all these examples I've given, the actual condition of the human heart can grow worse while the outward behavior in society has less notable social impact. It does this because all these solutions weaken our ties to each other and increases our connections to some abstract intermediary like the state. So we bother each other less because we have less connection to each other, not because our hearts have been made better. Everything in the drive to separate sexuality from commitment and family, to separating generosity of the giver and the gratitude of the receiver, they all do this. And it's not limited to those examples. I sense this repeating pattern. The new civil religion consistently isolates us from one another so that traditional sin is more effectively covered up rather than repudiated. So we have a new civil religion. There is no separation between state and this religion. They're one and the same. They do not respond to the will and the consent of the people. They manufacture it through the strategic use of fiat currency, where you basically pay for your own reprogramming through, they issue money and the value backing that money is stolen from the dollars you earn. There's no restraint. They build artificial people called corporations and then enforce their will through those, even more so than real people. Corporations have more access to your government than you do. You're a real person, and they're an artificial legal creation of the government. And yet they can see your congressman, a representative, a lobbyist for them much easier than you can. So despite all this, though, for a while, it's going to seem like they've succeeded in building a morality and a religion without God is basically what it is. But it is still a state religion, and one that reduces outward misconduct and seems to produce wealth. It's based on debt. It's based on phonies. It's based on sweeping things under the rug. It's all based on false accounting. Even as the pillars of this faith itself is built on falsehood. Rapidly advancing technology should make life better, and it should produce economic gains. Those advantages are not the results of some new religion without God, but rather that religion is gathering credit for momentum built up before it was ascendant. In the same way, the illusion of prosperity is just maintained by writing $1 trillion worth of hot checks every year. You let me write $1 trillion of hot checks every year, and yeah, I could build the illusion of prosperity. But those are still hot checks written on the accounts of the next generation. We're robbing, we're generationally looting. This generation, because the government has attacked ideas and restraints from the past and basically tried to portray everybody in the past as a bunch of ignorant bigots who didn't understand anything, and we know so much more now, and most of mankind's knowledge is contained in our generation, and a bunch of other arrogant things they've filled the heads of this generation with. You know, this generation thinks it's more moral than past generations because it's following the virtues of this new godless civil religion instead of a traditional one. Guess what? You are not more moral. The past generations would have never saddled future generations with the debt just so they could tell themselves, oh, we're good people, we supported this program for government to do X and Y and make the state bigger, which is what the priests of this religion wanted you to do in the first place. Make themselves bigger and your connections to each other smaller. That's what they wanted. The present masters of the world have not invented a system so perfect that no one has to be good anymore. They haven't done that. They have created the illusion of that. All they've done is found a way to hide for a time the outward costs of human evil. But the truth is transcendent. The truth is beyond propaganda. The truth is beyond the reach of even the state. Perception is not reality. Reality is reality, and perceptions fail. The truth is going to out. And time will tell us what will happen to souls and to societies that are built in the shifting sand of collective consensus rather than transcendent moral truth. Thank you so much for listening.